It was a dramatic day in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. The judge threatened to remove Combs from the courtroom for interacting with the jury.
The courtroom was packed attorneys shoulder to shoulder, press wedged into every spare inch. And that electric hush that warns a thunderclap is on the way. Sean Diddy Combs sat bolt upright at the defense table, eyes locked on the bench, while his lawyers whispered like gamblers shuffling last chance chips. Reporters clutched notepads so tightly they crinkled, already scripting tomorrow's lead. A king's crown tilts today. Everyone felt the same static thought. The air itself was different, and it would never feel ordinary again. You know a storm is real when even the federal agents outside look nervous. Dawn had barely broken on March 25, 2024, when a convoy of unmarked SUVs swept through the iron gates of two oceanside mansions, one perched above Biscayne Bay, the other hiding behind hedges in Holmby Hills. Neighbors peered through blinds as 100-year-old banyan shivered under rotor wash from a circling DHS helicopter. Agents moved like surgeons, gloves on, body cams rolling, every room photographed before a single drawer was opened. They carted away rifles fitted with novelty gold triggers, closets of shattered phones, pill bottles still rattling, and enough half-empty baby oil jugs to fill a kiddie pool. Back at the courthouse, a paralegal scrolling live updates mouthed the summary that would become gossip gospel. This empire runs on secrets, not singles. Every empire collapses the same way a hairline crack becomes a canyon no one can jump. For Combs, that crack appeared as a neatly stapled civil complaint. His former protege Cassie Ventura stepped out of a black SUV at 60 Center Street wearing sunglasses as large as certainty itself, then filed suit for a decade of abuse, coercion, and fear. 24 hours and a $20 million settlement later, the ink wasn't even dry before investigators already prying at the edges felt. The air pressure changed. Whisper turned to thunder, and thunder shakes loose everything nailed down. Imagine opening a gilded nightstand and finding 3 passports, a burner phone, and a thumb drive labeled only summer files. Agents cataloged 23 such drives between the properties, but at least 14 were wiped within minutes of the first gate swinging open. One investigator later testified that the faint smell of lavender lubricant still hung in the office as he cloned a MacBook Pro dripping of viscous fluid. "I couldn't tell if the machine overheated or if someone drowned it," he joked later. In court, the jurors did not laugh. Downstairs, tech crews mirrored a forgotten iCloud account linked to a phone presumed lost since 2019. Encrypted messages time-stamped to the raid's first-minute read. Dump everything from summer. Mirrors only. No backups. 15 minutes later, footage, deleted and vacuumed. He's wheels up. It was a playbook written in real time. The final stunner emerged from a sealed wine cellar where 4 tower servers hummed behind. Biometric glass. Forensic metadata proved a full wipe had finished 52 minutes before the battering ram hit the Holmby Hills gate. Whoever pressed delete was counting seconds, not minutes. Cassie's complaint detonated across the industry like TNT, filed at 8:03 on a fogged in November morning. The 29-page narrative ricocheted through labels and studios before lunch. She charted a decade-long descent. From euphoric studio nights where hits were born to hotel rooms where phones were locked in mini-safes and non-disclosure agreements. Thrust onto iPads before champagne lost its fizz. Timing was everything. New York's Adult Survivors ACTA, one-year portal allowing old claims to leap the statute of limitations wall, was 6 days from expiring. Cassie filed on day 359, within 24 hours. The case settled for an amount so large even seasoned entertainment lawyers raised brows. Officially, everyone called it closure. Unofficially, the settlement smelled like containment. Overnight, #SurvivingBadBoy racked up 2 million tweets. Backup dancers described impromptu parties where security collected phones in velvet pouches. A wardrobe stylist posted, then deleted. An Instagram story about a chartered jet that felt like an airborne after-hours club. A session vocalist spoke of waking to a doctor administering 4 fluids while Combs paced the suite dictating new lyrics. 6 more women surfaced within half a year to former assistants, a reality show runner-up, a 1990s girlfriend, a Paris runway model, and a European tour caterer. Their stories stretched from county fairgrounds to yachts off Ibiza. But the beats rhymed: surprise plane tickets, withheld pay, hush money labeled appearance fee, and a rotating crew of medics, summoned when revelry spilled into medical crisis. Civil attorneys called it leverage. Federal agents called it pattern evidence. Each filing cracked open bank ledgers, hotel ledgers, and an NDA vault deeper than anyone guessed. Task force strategists pinned red yarn across corkboards, matching Jane Doe dates 2 plaid-lined flight manifests, suspicious cash withdrawals, and cell tower dumps. By spring, investigators realized they weren't just chasing assault allegations. They were mapping a well-oiled cleanup brigade specialists in vanishing cameras, factory resetting recorders, and scattering kilometers of digital dust. September 16, 2024 began with clear skies and ended with satellite trucks. Phones buzzed with one push alert: Combs arrested on federal sex trafficking, racketeering. The 53-page indictment read like a producer's cut of a crime saga: transportation for illicit acts, money laundering, witness intimidation, and obstruction. At arraignment, the defense offered a single-read, thin defense. Every encounter was consensual. Court observers exchanged glances. Intent, they knew, was about to be cross-examined by metadata. Digital fingerprints never fully disappear. A mirrored MacBook revealed files erased at 0 hours, 3 minutes, and 7 seconds, the exact second a battering ram kissed the Los Angeles estate. 3 hours later, a Manhattan nightclub's DVR logged a remote wipe. Between those timestamps, chat bubbles flared, club footage gone. Working on it, all quiet by sunrise. Even silence testified. Gap analysis showed 20-minute holes in surveillance streams that otherwise ran non-stop. Agents compared the voids to missing diary page, exactly the pages telling the story you need. Spring 2025, the trial burst open, like a dropped mic. Defense moved to suppress the mirrored messages, calling the warrant a fishing expedition. Judge Ramirez asked why they'd waited 15 days. Counsel fumbled. The gallery's inhale felt like a vacuum imploding. Grainy audio soon spilled from the overhead speakers, 2 voices mapping a wipe, referencing security chief Gene Deal and a 50-grand hush wire. An ex-security consultant followed, 2 nights torching servers at Combs' direction. The judge, famous for patience, warned that one more delay tactic would earn contempt and personal sanctions. Combs' fingers tapped a single, slow beat, the soundtrack of a dynasty in freefall. Corporate exits turned into an exodus. Liquor giant Diageo annulled, a 16-year tequila marriage, stripping Combs of equity and future royalties. Peloton muted every bad boy track after hallway footage leaked on TikTok. Howard University returned a $1 million donation and rescinded an honorary doctorate displayed once in campus brochures. Revolt staff opened Slack to find an announcement: founder divesting to protect creators. Empower Global, a Black-owned marketplace meant to rival Amazon, watched storefronts shutter one by one. Boardrooms weighed future revenue against reputational blast radius, and risk won in unanimous votes. Music platforms faced a nightmare: erase one name and you erase a decade of chart history. Combs wasn't merely a rapper. He was a producer, publisher, cameo king. Remove his credit, and classics like I'll Be Missing You, Mo Money, Mo Problems, and Shaky a Tail Feather lose royalty spines. Some services buried his metadata. Others quietly yanked playlists, replacing them with golden-era hip-hop mixes minus a bad boy beat. Radio programmers shaved spins. Festival bookers widened berth, fearing protest. For the first time. Since 1997, insiders whispered about a catalog frozen, no reissues. No deluxe remasters, no 25th anniversary marketing cycles. Sentencing loomed like a second trial. Federal guidelines for sex trafficking start at 10 years. Racketeering can add decades, and obstruction gilds the cage. Combs, at 55, faced a timeline that could outlive him. Prosecutors teased. Fresh charges money moving through Caribbean galleries. Crypto wallets titled Studio, Petty Cash LLCs, named after lyrics. Wall Street watched Combs' remaining ventures real estate funds. Clothing royalties. Pricey tequila resid wondering if any could survive a brand meltdown. Verdict day arrived like a pressure wave. After 3 marathon deliberation days, jurors returned, guilty on every primary count. Gasps rippled from mahogany walls to midtown jumbotrons. Stock tickers for music conglomerates seesawed 7% before lunchtime. 3 months later, victims faced Combs at sentencing. One read a diary entry scrawled in cramped letters. He said, "Music saved me, so I owe silence." Judge Ramirez delivered 38 federal years, 46 million restitution, and lifetime supervision. Even freedom, someday, would arrive with shackles. Within an hour, defense filed appeals claiming digital evidence admission errors. But before briefs settled, 2 more grand juries unsealed indictments: financial crimes. In Delaware, witness tampering in Nevada. Investigators traced 12 million through overlapping shell companies and an art auctioneer in Curacao. The industry reckoned in real time. Streaming apps flashed disclaimers before any track with a Combs credit. Award shows stitched tribute. Packages that skipped the bad boy era, leaving awkward gaps in televised montages. A former protege dropped a Doc Azuris, platinum, and silence, revealing studio practices once whispered in green rooms: phone stack bowls, envelope bonuses. Consent blurred by power. Culture kept recalibrating. Survivors launched Echo Chamber, a podcast reclaiming their stories 1 episode at a time. Hashtag wars volleyed. Erase bad boy versus art without title. Archival footage resurfaced, late-night interviews now paused, and annotated with commentaries dissecting body language once dismissed as charisma. Media scholars dubbed it retroactive annotation, the collective editing of cultural memory. A year post-sentencing, the Holmby Hills mansion sold at foreclosure for half its Zillow zest. Miami's compound sat vacant, windows boarded, pool drained to cracked concrete. Royalty streams tanked 72% in quarterly reports. Yet alumni of the Bad Boy roster staged a charity concert. No Combs tracks allowed, raising funds for survivor foundations. The finale, a gospel choir belting "We'll Be Missing Us." A reclaimed chorus turned act of healing. Music historians now shelve the Combs trial beside watershed sagas surviving R. Kelly, the hashtag Me Too wave, the Britney conservatorship reckoning. But the lesson outlives legal briefs. Metadata never lies. Every ping, swipe, and sync leaves fingerprints no NDA can bleach. In business schools and record label boardrooms, executives scroll through anonymized chat logs as cautionary Relexa. Reminder that the cloud remembers more than any witness. Power can amplify a voice or swallow 1,000 others. If this story raises more questions than answers, sit with that tension. Let it influence what you stream, whom you cheer, and how loudly you applaud when the spotlight crowns another idol. Justice landed in court, but the cultural verdict is still unfolding. And the next reckoning may arrive before the echo of this one fades. 5 summers passed, and a new generation of artists filled arenas once synonymous with Bad Boys mythology. Under leads and pyro cannons, they performed with phones unconfiscated, live streaming every backstage hallway in 4K. Industry executives now travel with compliance officers' lawyers in sneakers, who wander green rooms listening for the faintest tremor of coercion. Overhead, drones buzz to enforce festival crowd limit ratios, a response to tragedies that once hid under the base. Inside USP Coleman, Combs became inmate number 92,047,112. He runs laps on a quarter-mile track cut between razor wire and pitching Florida pines. He teaches a music theory workshop on Wednesday afternoons, scrawling chord progressions across a whiteboard, repainted so often the plastic veneer has blistered. When new inmates realize who leads the class, their eyes widen, then dart away. The brand is a ghost they recognize but no longer fear. Commissary workers note he buys extra instant coffee, trading packets for battered issues of Billboard 2 months out of date. Outside, a bipartisan task force, nicknamed the Clean Stages Commission, delivered its first report to Congress. It cites the Combs case 33 times and recommends sweeping changes. Mandatory third-party oversight on artist-sponsored travel, a federal registry for non-disclosure agreements tied to sexual misconduct settlements, and a 10-year digital storage mandate for all security footage shot in venues exceeding 2,000 occupants. Lobbyists resisted, but public polling after the verdict hit 86% in favor. The bill, retitled the Safe Touring Act, cleared the House by year's end. Streaming services introduced an opt-out micro-toggle labeled exclude artists with active felony convictions. Within a month, 43 million users flipped the switch. Algorithms recalibrated, nudging legacy playlists into obscurity. Historians observed a digital erasure happening in real time, not forced, but chosen by fingertip democracy. Survivor advocacy networks capitalized on the moment. They expanded hotlines, pushed for reparations funds sourced from catalog royalties, and partnered with tech firms to create an encrypted app where touring personnel log incidents anonymously. The app pings legal counsel if 3 reports target the same production within a week. On TikTok, a creator posted side-by-side edits, 1997 Combs strutting in a fisheye lens, next to 2027 concert-run soundchecks where stage managers walk female dancers to rideshares under body cam escort. The split screen racked up 9 million likes and a debate about whether progress measured in optics is progress at all. Academia followed suit. 2 Ivy League universities launched a joint course titled Empire, Exploitation, and the Economics of Silence. The syllabus begins with early jazz club segregation, arcs through Motown's artist contracts, and dedicates 3 full weeks to the Combs trial as the inflection point when metadata toppled myth. Meanwhile, vinyl-only label quietly pressed. An instrumental box set of classic bad boy hits, no vocals, no ad-libs, just the beats that once shook Jeeps with open tailgates. Critics called it haunting, a soundtrack stripped of its master of ceremonies, each bass line echoing like a cautionary tale etched in wax. In Harlem, an elementary school removed a mural featuring Combs in a crown and replaced it with one showing local legends in community service: a firefighter, a nurse, a jazz teacher. Students wrote essays on why heroes change and why sometimes they must. At year 5, a thin paperback appeared on indie bookshop tables. Silenced Echoes, a collection of poems from survivors across the entertainment spectrum. The foreword reads, "We cannot delete the past, but we can master the mix." The book sold modestly, yet found its way into dorm backpacks, where phrases turned to protest chants outside label offices. No single moment erased the echo of Sean Combs, but each ripple dulled the myth, as the cloud kept remembering every swipe and sync. Still there for anyone who cared to search, but the culture learned to filter memory with intention. In that space between deletion and celebration, a new beat emerged, slower, deliberate, impossible to dance to without remembering who once owned the rhythm as a decade unfolded. The trial's ripple widened into a generational watermark. Year 6 saw a streaming war none could have predicted. Two rival platforms announced AI-driven clean room remasters of hip-hop classics, surgically removing Combs' audible ad-libs and replacing them with crowd ambience or instrumental overlays. Purists decried it as revisionist, survivors praised it as reclamation, and copyright scholars argued well past midnight on livestream panels that drew more viewers than prime-time sitcoms. Legally, the Safe Touring Act matured into an international pact. Canada, the UK, and Australia adopted mirror statutes, each requiring real-time tripwire encryption on backstage cameras and third-party wellness auditors on tours grossing over $5 million. Insurance carriers refused to underwrite concerts lacking the new safeguards. And for the first time since the hair metal era, backstage passes became less sexy than a badge of compliance. By year 7, a federal appellate court upheld Combs' conviction on all but one obstruction count, shaving 18 months off his timetable but bolstering precedent for digital chain of custody warrants. Law school journals filled symposium issues dissecting how cloud mirroring reshaped evidentiary standards. Meanwhile, Combs transferred to FCI Jessup's medium security music education block, where he recorded meditation voiceovers. For inmates battling insomnia, the warden allowed a pilot program. Recidivism among participants dropped 4%. Igniting a separate debate can influence rehabilitate after it devastates. Outside barbed wire, the ecosystem of accountability flourished. An independent label collective launched the Transparent Ledger Initiative, uploading every royalty pathway to an open blockchain so session musicians could verify payments in real time. The pulsing ledger, viewable on any phone, became a TikTok trend where users scrolled screens under the hashtag #FollowTheMoney. Labels slow to adopt the system found their DMs flooded with side-eye emoji and protest GIFs. Year 8 brought the unexpected, a cyber library leak of sealed exhibits, including the full transcript of the infamous group chat, now blacked out with code names but unmistakably damning. Students at Howard staged a reading marathon, 12 hours straight, parsing every emoji in front of streaming webcams. 250,000 viewers tuned in, turning legal minutia into binge content. At the same time, guerrilla murals appeared from Camden to Compton. They depicted a boombox sprouting roots emblazoned with the phrase "culture remembers even when it forgets." City councils hotly debated whether to scrub or preserve them. In most cases, public vote kept the paint. Year 9. Documentary filmmaker Ava Ridge released Silence in 3D, combining volumetric capture with courtroom audio to place viewers at the heart of key testimony. Festivalgoers donned VR headsets and walked virtual hallways where security cameras cut to black. The experience ended with a mirror. Participants saw themselves and a question floated overhead: what does your silence allow? Critics hailed it as the most effective empathy machine since VR hospice simulations. Commerce evolved too. An enterprising startup launched Royaltree, an app that lets fans reassign fractions of their streaming revenue to survivor charities with a swipe. Within months, 30% of users who previously blocked bad boy tracks chose instead to funnel pennies per play toward therapeutic grants. Silicon Valley blogs dubbed it redirect economics, proof that cancellation isn't the only lever. In year 10, Congress convened the Cultural Restitution Commission, tasked with exploring whether a portion of historical royalties linked to proven abuse cases should be redirected. Heated hearings pitted music rights associations against victim advocacy coalitions. The hearings streamed live. At peak, 2 million viewers watched a 1980 session. Guitarists testify how being trapped in a contract haunted him longer than the physical injuries. Meanwhile, Combs hit age 65. His parole hearing loomed. Survivors flew in to oppose. Early release. One carried photocopies of vanished diary pages miraculously recovered from a cloud cache once thought lost. Metadata times stamped their creation within hours of an assault. The board deliberated 30 minutes before denying. Perot, citing continuing social destabilization. Academia, activism, commerce, and correction for sectors once siloed now formed a feedback loop where policy birthed art. Art spurred apps. Apps funded counseling. Counseling influenced law. In that circuit, the Combs saga became less cautionary tale and more operating manual by year 11. Middle school curriculums included a capstone titled Digital Footprints and Consequence, featuring anonymized chat logs from the case. Students used highlighters to map how a single command led to 30 endpoints, proving complex cause and effect better than any textbook diagram. In cultural retreats from Aspen to Accra, think tank moderators asked panels the same closing question: can redemption scale? The answers diverged. Some believed restorative justice requires open doors. Others countered that certain thresholds, once crossed, forever close. But nearly all agreed on one point: data made it impossible to look away. By year 12, technology allowed predictive mapping of tour bus movement patterns. Deviations from registered itineraries triggered silent alerts to third-party monitors. An incident during a global pop tour proved the system's worth. Location flags led authorities to intervene before an overdosed backup dancer became a statistic. Year 13 saw an artistic renaissance. A coalition of female producers dropped Regain the Beat, a T7-track album sampling vintage. Bad boy instrumentals cleared through replacement licenses that funnel royalties into a survivor trust. The record debuted at #1 on curated playlists. Its lead single, titled Mirrorball Amnesia, blending nostalgia with accountability. Year 14. Once gated footage from the Combs raid entered the public domain under a Liberation of Records Act. Citizen documentarians stitched the eerie visual of baby oil jugs and shredded hard drives into short horror films labeled American Empire. High schoolers studied them in media literacy units about framing and context. In the 15th summer since the raid. A reunion of 1990s producers gathered for a roundtable podcast. For 3 hours, they discussed the difference between influence and ownership, eventually conceding that every generation must decide how much of the past to inherit unedited. The episode trended #1 across platforms, signaling that long-form nuance could still break through the algorithmic churn. And somewhere in the Florida heat, inmate number 92,047,112 continued jogging laps. The echo of distant subwoofers barely audible beyond concrete walls. Each step on the track tapped a muted rhythm, steady, relentless, stripped of hyper-reminder that the beat can go on even when the producer no longer cues the next song.